Welcome Towson University alumni and our graduating students. I'm Margaret Paulson, the Young Alumni and Student Outreach Coordinator and a proud 2011 TU graduate. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar as part of Senior and Recent Grad Week. I wanted to briefly share some information about the Alumni Association before we begin. We are a free organization that you automatically become a member of once you graduate. We have a free online, alumni-only community, Tiger Connect, where you can connect with former classmates, register for events, and see special discounts, benefits, and programs only available to alumni. Some of our discount programs include discounts on home and auto insurance through Geico, discount tickets to the Maryland Zoo, the National Aquarium, and the Hippodrome, just to name a few. We also have an Alumni Alliance program where alumni can form groups based on shared interests, whether it be a student activity that you participated in as a student, geographical, location, cultural, or identity. Please feel free to visit alumni.towson.edu and look around the alumni website to see all of the benefits and services that we offer. So leading today's presentation is Danielle Brower. Danielle is a career counselor with the Towson University Career Center, and she works with students individually and in groups around major and career decision making. Danielle also teaches the Education 121 Life and Career Planning course and co-supervises the Career Peer Advisors. Danielle, thanks for presenting with us today.
Happy to be here, absolutely. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Bring that over. Give me 1 second. All right. Okay. All right, can everyone see the screen? It says Start Smart on it? Great. And if you can't hear me or if it sounds weird or you can't see anything at any point during, feel free to put it in the chat and I'm happy to fix whatever's happening because I'm a little have issue with tech, so I'll do my best. So anyway, again, my name's Danielle Brower. I'm a career counselor, and today we're going to focus on salary negotiation, why that's important, and very specific steps on how to do that. Because I know everyone is probably thinking, of course, I should. Salary negotiation is something that, high-powered executives do, or that's something that's not for me as an entry-level person, or that's not for something that I would even know where to start to do. Everyone should be negotiating salary, and you should do it every single time, no matter what job it is. So we're going to talk through very specific steps on how to do that to really empower yourself to feel like you could do this too. So it's called Start Smart, which is put through the AAUW, which is the American Association for University Women. And the reason that it does that is because we're going to focus a little bit at the beginning on the gender pay gap and how it affects you. So women in general are paid 82 cents for every dollar earned by a man. And the gender pay gap by race is even worse. So for Hispanic or Latina, they are only paid 54% for every man. For every dollar that a man makes, Hispanic or Latina, women make 54%, American Indian 57%, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders 61%, Black or African American 62%, white 79%, and Asian 90%. So this is a real, salary negotiation is for everyone, but it's particularly important for women and particularly important for women of color. And why would that be important? So say you're going into an entry-level job and you're like, I didn't salary negotiate. I just didn't feel comfortable. I need this job. I really didn't think it was the right time. What happens is if you don't do that, you could lose. So for example, white women lose $418,000, almost $419,000 over a course of a 40-year career. The reason, and African American, $840,000, and Latinos over $1 million. Why is that? Because the way that people look at your salary history about what they're going to pay for you next. So if you do not negotiate that entry-level salary, you're already starting at a deficit. And so it's important because then you're going to be starting at a deficit. So when you go to get a pay increase, if you're looking for a raise, things like that, you're already starting lower. So it's important to negotiate salary every single time. Okay. So okay, these got messed up. I was wondering why that was there. So there's 4 steps to salary negotiation. Now, I will preface this by saying there is a lot of information to cover. I'm going to try to get as much as possible to give some specific examples, but it's really, this is a framework. I would highly recommend taking a look at our resources. We have a salary negotiation page on our website. You can also use AAUW. Their link is there, and I'll show you where the web page is at the end of the presentation. But this is just a framework to get you started and kind of get a feel for what it would be like. But there's lots more information and resources and scenarios that might come up that I'm not going to be able to cover today. But I'm going to try to give you that overall framework to get you started. So there's 4 steps to salary negotiation. The first one, which we're going to talk about, is know your value, know your target salary and benefits, know your strategy, and then practice. Okay. So let me try to get back to there. Know your value. You are your own brand, and this is something that you want to think about through the entire job search process for your resume, interviewing, and then salary negotiation. If you cannot advocate for yourself, no one else will. And I know this is hard because we're taught our entire lives to be humble, not to brag, not to really overemphasize or emphasize accomplishments, because that would make other people uncomfortable. You throw that all out, all of those preconceived notions or society's notions of not doing that, you have to do that in the job search process, because if you don't, you have to make that connection for employers. They are looking at hundreds of applicants, sometimes thousands of applicants. If you cannot make that connection for them about why you're the best candidate, why you are standing out, then it's not going to happen. They're not going to make those leaps for you because they don't know you, and they're really just trying to get the best candidate. So it's important for you to know who you are, why you stand out, and how you can articulate that to an employer. So again, these are some questions you want to ask yourself, and you should be asking this before salary negotiation. You should be asking this in the resume, or when you're writing your resume, when you're thinking about interviewing. What differentiates you from your classmates, from the people in your industry? How do you bring value to your company or organization, specifically to that company or organization? You don't want it to be broad. You want to research that company or organization and know very specifically how you could bring value to them. And what skills, accomplishments, and work experience demonstrate value or contributions you will make in the position you are seeking. So that's a really long way to say you need to attach specific experiences to skills. Anyone can say, hey, I have great communication skills. Anyone can say that. An employer is not going to remember that. If you give a very specific example of where you've used communication skills, whether on the job, whether in a project at school, whatever it may be. I know that if you did the interviewing, they probably talked about how to answer an interview question or behavioral question, giving very specific examples. This is, again, that similar thing. You should always be attaching skills to experiences. So you don't just want to tell them an experience and not say, well, what did I gain from that? Same thing, you always want to have experiences attached to skills. So they should always be together. So here's a way you could say it. I accomplished X using my skills in XYZ, which benefited my company by blank. So for example, I accomplished high sales using my oral and written communication skills, my customer service, and my problem solving, which benefited my company by a 15% increase in sales year over year. So I just pulled that out because I have an actual example that I've lost. So yours would be better than that, but basically you get the feel. It needs to be very specific, and it should actually be attached to skills, or excuse me, if you can give specific numbers and really quantify how you've benefited a company, even better. Employers really like that. Yeah, so making it results focused is really important. So what's the best way you can be your best advocate? Document your accomplishments. You'd be surprised how much people forget. I review resumes a lot, and I'll say, well, can you tell me what they'll write down very basic things on their resume. And I'll say, well, can you tell me a little bit about what you did at this job, or, at this project, or in this campus organization? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? They'll say, they'll start talking to me about it, and a ton of accomplishments, a ton of skills gained will come out, but it's nowhere on the resume because they're like, oh yeah, I actually forgot I did that until I started talking about it. So document your accomplishments. Write things down. You're like, wow, I'm really proud that I did that, or I'm really impressed with how I did that. Make sure you're keeping record of it, because you would be surprised how many times you'll forget, especially in an interview setting, because you're going to be stressed a little, and so you might forget things. So it's really important to document things and keep them at the front of your mind. Think beyond the task. And so again, a lot of students and me and everyone else in general, they'll focus on the tasks they do day to day. You need to get big picture. What are you learning from all those tasks? What skills have you gained? Big picture, what did you accomplish? Not just focusing on the day to day. And again, quantifying your work, and everything counts. So again, this is for everyone, but particularly women tend to take on more things like event planning and side projects around the office, and they'll think that, yeah, that wasn't technically part of my job description, so I'm not going to mention it. Everything matters. So even if you did a thing for one day, but it was a really important volunteer community involvement thing, that goes on your resume, or it talks about in an interview. You also don't need to be paid for it to be on your resume or talked about in an interview. Everything counts because it gives the full picture of who you would be as an employee. So that's the first step. And again, really, this should be kind of woven, and this is way before the salary negotiation, but this is something that will come into play when you are negotiating salary, because you need to have that confidence and that understanding that I am the best for this and I should be paid for my skills and my accomplishments, and I can readily articulate to you what those are. That will be very important as we get further along in this negotiation process. So that's why we start here, which should be, again, you should be kind of doing some of these exercises and interventions before you even start the job search process. All right, so now we're getting into the nitty-gritty. This should also be done before you start searching for a job. So know your target salary and your benefits. Excuse me. So there's 6 steps to benchmarking your salary and benefits. So first, you need to research and identify comparable job titles. And I'm going to give you some research tools to do that, but there's lots of different ways to look at that. But you need to know what people that have the same amount of years of experience, same education, same region, what they're being paid for the specific job that you're seeking. Okay, so that's why it's important to know some specific job titles that you're interested in, senior year when you're about to start job searching, so that you can get a feel for what people are being paid. Again, finding the market rate for the position and establishing your target salary. So this is important to know kind of what the job outlook is for that position. So is it basically kind of like a buyer's market or a seller's market? So is this are there going to be more people to fill the positions than positions, or are there going to be way more positions than people to fill them? And so we have to kind of pay attention to, is it a competitive industry right now based on the current economy, or is it not? And so really having a full scope of what the market rate is. Then you're going to use your target salary to create your target salary range. I cannot emphasize this enough. You will never give a specific number when you are salary negotiating. It should always be a range, because then you have some wiggle room. If they're like, what are you looking for? It always should be a range. So you should have a target salary, but so your target salary is, say it's $55,000 annual. You should have that, and then it should be $5,000 to $10,000 more, usually above that. So your target salary is actually the lowest number, and then you're going to go 5 to 10 above it, because that gives you some wiggle room, and they'll probably come somewhere behind that. So you never want to say, oh, 55,000 is what I want to make. That gives you no room for negotiation, no room for movement. It also gives them no room for movement. So it's like a yes or no, rather than quantifying and giving everyone some room to discuss and to come to a common, a mutually beneficial number. Determine your walk away point. And again, you're going to figure this out before you start applying. You need to know what salary you need to make before you start applying. So you need to live. And so you need to figure out what is the salary that you can make to live comfortably. Okay, and that comes into with number 5. You need to create a realistic budget. How much money do you need for rent, for student loans, things like that? We'll get a little bit more into that at the end, but you want to create a realistic budget. So you need to know, you don't want to accept a salary that's below your walkaway point. And then the last one is assess the value of benefits. This is a really important thing to think about. So I've seen students who've accepted, so they're going between 2 job offers. One offered more money, but no health insurance. So they was offered no health insurance, but they got a higher salary. And then the other one was a lower salary, but offered health insurance. The student went with the higher salary, but then had to figure out health insurance, and it ended up costing them much more because they ended up having a car accident. And so it just ended up, the bills were much more. And so it's kind of paying attention to the full picture. The salary is very important, but there are other things to consider, and we'll talk through what benefits you want to look at and what will be available to you. And also if it aligns with your values. So for example, is it really important for you to be able to take a time off? Is it important for you to be able to travel, to do other things? And so maybe you're going to take a lower salary job, but it has much more vacation and personal time. And so you need to balance kind of all those things out to look at the full picture before making a decision. And you want to think about these things ahead of time, because when you're in that salary negotiation phase, it can move fairly quickly, because the beginning of a job search tends to go pretty slow, and you're like, oh my God, I'm waiting, I'm hurrying up, I'm waiting. But then once you get to that interview and then they make you an offer and then you're negotiating, things happen fairly quickly. And so you really want to be prepared as much as possible ahead of time to really be able to come at them with a very prepared, thought out ideas and what you need and what you want, and then be able to convey that to them. You don't want to be doing that on the fly in front of them. Okay. All right, setting your targets. So target salary, your worth based on objective market wage data. And so again, objective is important because some of you may feel I should earn more or I should do this. It has to be based on market value. Target salary range is a range that you use to negotiate with the employer. And like I said before, the salary range that you found that is your target salary is your anchor and is at the bottom of the range. So again, you're not going to say, oh, that's at the start. That should be towards the end. And your walkaway point should be the lowest salary you are willing to accept and still reach an agreement. So it is also a tool to prevent you from accepting a salary you may later regret. So like I said, you need to know these numbers ahead of time so that you can make sure that you're advocating for yourself and you're setting yourself up for success. So a really good resource is salary.com, and I'm going to show you a screenshot of what that looks like. It's a really good to give you a lot of information, not only about salary, but also about benefits. So you can see here when you just type in the job title and the location, and then, so I'm going to give you an example. So say I'm an entry level, I'm graduating, and I want to apply to Public Relations Specialist 1. And so this is important. When you are researching and determining market value, make sure you are looking based on your years of actual experience. So you can see here, it says typically requires 0 to 2 years of related experience. That's really important because say you've actually done 5 internships during your time here at Towson, or you've actually been working and going to school full time. And so you actually have 3 to 5 or even 5 to 8 years of experience. Make sure you are doing salary research on mid-level positions and not entry-level positions because you're selling yourself short. And keep in mind, related experience doesn't need to be paid experience. It can be internships, it can be volunteering. If it's directly related to the job duties and responsibilities, then you absolutely should count that as years of experience. I see a lot of students who are job searching and they'll say, how am I supposed to have 0 to 2, or how am I supposed to have 2 years of experience? I'm still in school for an entry level. What they're talking about is anything that's paid or unpaid that is specifically related to the experience that you would be doing at that job. And so keeping that in mind. Kind of the reverse, make sure you're not looking at mid-level positions if you only have 1 year of experience, because when you start to negotiate or even apply to jobs, you may not hear back as much because you don't have that required experience. So when you're doing that salary research, make sure you're looking at the job titles, the requirements and responsibilities, as well as the years of experience or the requirements of the job. So maybe you need to be certified in something, maybe you need to have a certain level of education, those kinds of things. So keeping that in mind and really reading that job description when you're doing that salary research. So this is a public relations specialist 1 from salary.com. And so you can see we start here with the salary. So you can down here, you can see annual education. So you can change things and then it will actually update the annual salary. So say you're like, actually, I have 3 to 5 years of experience, or I have master's degree or I have an associate's degree. So it'll change based on the different things that it can add on at the bottom. You don't have to purchase the full report. It's free. The full report will give you a lot of information. To be honest, I don't really find it necessary. I only have a free account, and I've been able to help people and I've negotiated the salaries with it. So don't feel like a full report is necessary. But you can see here that it'll give you the median annual salary. And so you want to look at the bottom 25% and the top 25%, and so, or 75%, excuse me. So getting a feel for what your range should be is really looking at that. Usually you want to stay in that medium annual salary, maybe a little bit more or a little bit less, depending on your years of experience or your level of education. So salary.com is great for that. Another thing that we have access to is called the NACE Salary Survey. We get one every fall, so we should be getting the fall 2020 soon. But basically what this does is it gives you starting salary by major. And so it breaks it down. So for example, if I was in PR, I would look at communication, journalism, and related programs, specifically public relations, advertising, and applied communication. And it can even break it down by region or geographic region. That's really important because as you can see here, the national average for PR is 40,000, but in the Mid-East region, it's 46. And that's because cost of living tends to be higher in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. If you're going to move to the Midwest, it's going to be lower. And so it's really important for you to know what cost of living is in the area in which you intend to live and where you intend to work. So do some research on that as well if you're not as familiar with the area. So if you don't currently live there or you just moved there, make sure you have a feel and make sure your budget reflects the cost of living in that area. Okay. So NACE Salary Survey, you can find that on our website, towson.edu/career center. I'll also show you a screenshot at the end, but that's where you can find the link to both salary.com and the NACE Salary Survey. Glassdoor is also really good because this is, and I saw someone asked about if it doesn't display on the job description, and we'll talk about in the process how to find that out. But you can also, Glassdoor will have actual employees report for that employer how much they were making. It's anonymous, so so people can log in and give an anonymous, hey, I was a PR relations specialist 1, I was making 43,000, that kind of thing. And so you can look at Glassdoor and get real time with that specific employer. So that can be important too. So for example, I've worked at institutions in certain areas where you make more, others you make less, but you get better benefits. And so, it can vary even within the same industry from employer to employer. And so you want to keep that in mind. If you can find the employer on Glassdoor, I would highly recommend using it. Now, I will say, usually mid-sized to larger organizations are on Glassdoor. You might not find that small business always on Glassdoor just because they don't have as many employees. But Glassdoor is also a great way to do that. And you can also look up reviews of the employer and other things, but it does have salary as well. Okay, so based on your research and based on understanding your years of experience, your education, what you're bringing to the table, you are going to set a target salary, so a specific number that's your target, and then the range. So again, it should be usually the bottom, the anchor is your target salary, and then you're going to use that range about $5,000 to $10,000 above that. So you can see here for this public relations specialist, it's going to be, I think the salary, I don't have the workbook in front of me, but I think the salary range for her was 50,000. So the median was 49,343. She went with 50,000 as a target range, or excuse me, the target, and then she went $5,000 above. So it went from 50 to 55,000 was her target salary range. Oh my goodness, I need to hurry up. Okay, so sorry, I just saw the time. So you're going to determine that walk away point. So again, you need to know what you can live on and what would be your walk away. So no matter, if the job isn't paying a certain salary, you cannot live on it. You cannot take the job. It doesn't matter what kind of job it is. You need to be able to live. So you need to know that walk away point. So how do you do that? You create a realistic budget. So here are some things you want to consider: rent, school loans. Even if you're not paying the school loans right after college, you're going to be paying them in the next year, 2 years. So it's important to factor that in. Food costs, transportation, insurance, clothing, entertainment. Most students, the biggest mistake they make when making this budget is they don't include actual living. They're like, okay, I have rent, I can pay utilities, I can pay my student loans, I have food, I can put gas in my car, that's it. And I'm like, are you going to live like that for the next 5 years where you literally cannot, go out anywhere, even to the movies? Well, no one can go to the movies now, but rent a movie, whatever that may be, you're not giving yourself any wiggle room. And so it's important to include what your real life would look like and include all of the costs that would be associated with that, okay? The other thing to consider is benefits. So like I said, you need to consider what the benefits are of the organization. So maybe they can't offer you that target salary, but they can offer you a great health insurance, or they can offer you a lot of sick personal and parental leave, or maybe they can offer you a title change. And why that is important is because say you start out as a coordinator, so you're a public relations coordinator, but maybe they're going to give you public relations manager position. That looks great on your resume and will really help you make more money in the next job you go to. And it really will help you negotiate if you have a public relations manager position as opposed to public relations coordinator, because that shows that you have a higher level. So I'm not going to read through all of these because, again, for time, but there are many things you want to consider. Again, considering the full package of that employer and what will be available to you that is outside of salary. But again, it doesn't matter how good the benefits are. If the salary doesn't align with your realistic budget, then you cannot accept that job. So salary.com also provides you a benefits calculator. So it shows you how much generally people get with bonuses or how much they're getting for retirement. So based on the industry, it'll show you what an industry standard would be for benefits within this specific position. So that can be really helpful to know what you should expect in your industry in terms of benefits. Okay, so you've done your research. So those things are done before you actually start job searching. You know what your worth is, you know your target salary and your target salary range, and you know your walkaway point. So those are key metrics you need to have before you begin your negotiation. Okay, so tips for entering your negotiation. This is, if you don't remember anything else I say, in this entire presentation, do not initiate talk of salary until after you have a job offer. Do not. If they ask you about salary at the beginning of because basically they're trying to figure out what you're thinking ahead of time. That's what they want to do, because they want to know how best to negotiate with you. You want to stay away from those conversations at almost all costs. And I'll give you some suggestions on how to kind of deflect in a professional way. But do not initiate, don't ask about salary in the interview, do not initiate, and you don't initiate the conversation at all. They should initiate the conversation. Bring your notes to the negotiation. Bring some key things. Hey, I want to, these are the things I want them to know about me. Here's my target salary. Here's why I think I deserve this. Remain positive and flexible. Keep in mind, it can be emotional when you're talking about your professional worth. I totally get that. But remain positive and flexible. This is a negotiation, and so it's a conversation, and so there should be some back and forth. If they say, 9 times out of 10, they're going to not take your target offer initially. So you don't want to shut down, be like, forget this, I'm not doing this, and walk out. Needs to be flexibility, and you could get there, but initially they may kind of push back, and that's normal. It's not a battle, it's a conversation. Don't get personal, and don't include personal things. So for example, if they say, hey, I'm going to give you 40,000, or we want to offer you 40,000. You don't want to say, well, I have bills to pay, I can't take this. That's true, but that's not part of this conversation. This stays professional based on your skills and accomplishment and your professional worth. You want to anticipate employers' reactions and responses, and we'll talk through some of that quickly. And remember, once you've gotten the job offer, they've picked you. They want to make it work. They don't want to go through the interview process again. So you have the power at that point to a certain extent. And so keep that in mind, that they've invested time and already invested money in you to get you to this point. So you need to use that to your advantage. Okay, deflection. How do you deflect? Because most employers will try to figure it out before the job offer is offered. They might say, what are your salary expectations? This can be done in application materials. This can also be done in an interview. Can you tell me your salary history? I need to know what salary you want in order to make you an offer. All not true. Those are all things that are them trying to fish for information. So say they ask for your salary history. Here are some responses you can mention. So this position is not exactly the same as my last job. I'd like to discuss what my responsibilities would be here and then determine a fair salary for this job. Something that I want to be very specific about is because most of you, if you're doing, part-time jobs or you're doing student jobs, that salary is not comparable to an entry-level position. So your salary history is actually not at all relevant to your current position that you're applying for. And so that's really important to deflect salary history if all possible. So again, I appreciate if you could make an offer based on whatever you have budgeted for this position, and we can go from there. Those kinds of things. And so you can really deflect in lots of different ways, still professionally. So if they say, what are your salary expectations, or what's your desired salary? And this can be done both asking in a cover letter or in an interview. So you can say, I'd like to see if I'm a good fit first. I'd like to learn more about the role before I set my expectations. And I appreciate if you make an offer based on what's budgeted, and we can go from there. So that's a very similar one throughout. And I expect that my salary would line up with market rates for similar positions. So this kind of middle one is a good to start with in the cover letter. So you don't want to, so say they're like, okay, right, give us a cover letter, and we want to know what your salary expectations are within the cover letter. You can say this exact phrase, I'd like to know more about the role. I expect that my salary will line up with market rates for similar positions. So you're not ignoring it, but you are deflecting in a professional way. So again, don't ignore the request, but you are not going to be the first to name it. So you can say things like here, what salary has been approved? What do you typically pay someone? So kind of turn around them and ask them questions. I'm open to a fair salary and reasonable offer. So again, my salary expectations are somewhat flexible. So if they keep coming and coming, and if they absolutely won't, they will not move forward with the interview or with the process before they know your salary, you can then finally say, my salary expectations are somewhat flexible, but my research shows a range between X and Y. And so then you're going to give them your target salary range there. But that is a last resort if it is clear that they're not going to move away from it, even after you've deflected in a professional way. Okay, so that's during the interview process if they're asking those questions. Now you've gotten the job and you've been offered the job. Now what? Never accept the offer on the spot. Never, ever, ever, ever. Actually, this is the thing to remember. If you don't remember anything else, this is the thing. Don't ever accept an offer on the spot, even if it's $20,000 more than you thought, even if they're giving you benefits that you've never even dreamed of. Do not accept it on the spot. You can be excited, but you can say, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for this opportunity and this offer. When do you need to have my answer, or when do you need to know by? Always, no matter what it is, no matter what position, never accept the offer on the spot. Okay. So say they offer you something and it's below your target range. So even if it's at your target range, you're still going to try to negotiate, because who knows? They may go further than that. So that's okay. So even if it's at your target salary, there's no reason that you can't try to negotiate for a little bit more. So if they say, what were you thinking? So say they offer you the job and you're like, what were you thinking salary-wise? Or, what are your expectations? So again, I'd be interested in knowing what you think the job is worth, or what salary has been approved, or what do you typically pay someone? And again, last resort, if they won't move forward with the job offer, then you can give them the range. What's your offer? Ask them immediately after, so it doesn't give them time to kind of manage the situation, basically. So that's, again, last resort. You want them to name the number first. That's the key. So say you give them your number and they're like, I don't have a budget for this high of a salary. And you can say, if that's the case, would you be open to working to identify ways to cover this salary this year, or to plan for increased funds next year? So if I can't make it this year, can I do it next year? Would you be open to discussing for next year, or can we talk about benefits and how maybe that can be increased? Or I absolutely understand budget constraints, but with my work history, I have demonstrated success. Can we revisit this in 6 months? So again, this is a common one. I don't have budget. So this is a way to kind of work with that to make sure that you're still being given what you deserve and what you're worth. So they're like, oh, we can't pay that for you now, but in the future, you'll have opportunities for growth in that far off magical land of the future. You would say things like, because this number is a little lower than I feel comfortable with, I'd love to discuss my opportunities for the future. I know that one of the most important things in this role is blank. So maybe it's sales or it's communication, whatever it be. If I'm able to deliver that in X amount of time, 6 months, 1 year, would you be open to raising my compensation to X? So you're asking for specifics, not this kind of broad, oh yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it. Employer, wait till next year. I thank you for your support. I do want to continue to align my values with the needs. Can we check again in 4 to 6 months? And so this can also be used not only in the interview, but also if you're looking for a pay raise, if you're currently working there and you're looking for a raise as well. So again, considering those benefits as part of the total package and making sure that they outline the benefits in writing. So as you go through, you're going to kind of do some practice with that. And so you're going to talk through based on what they're saying and ask them to name a number first. And then you'll go back and say, this is more in line with what I was thinking if it's lower. And then you'll go back and forth. Say you finally get, you get your target salary range, you get the benefits you want, get it in writing. This is so important. Do not, you want to make sure, like, this is so wonderful. So say they send you a job offer emailed, you negotiate, they should send you an updated job offer with the outlined new salary and with the outlined benefits. It needs to be in writing, and it should be an official statement, whether it can be through email, but it needs to be official. It can also be mailed to you depending on the organization, but it needs to be in writing before you officially accept. So do not accept anything based on a verbal offer. Okay, so the entire life cycle looks like this. You're going to apply an interview, negotiate and accept. If you earn a raise or promotion, and then you seek a new job, you're going to do it all over again. So this is important. This is a constant cycle to keep you in line with what you're worth based on your skills and your experience. Okay. It's so important to practice. We're not going to get to practice today because we're out of time, but this is a really hard conversation to have for many people, and to do it right, because it's a real balance between, advocacy and confidence, but without being aggressive or negative. And so I would really suggest practicing with someone, practicing with people. If you can practice with a mentor or someone else in the industry, even better. And so really practicing what you want to say and anticipate what others will say, an employer pushback, and how would you respond. This will make it as easy as possible for you to feel as confident to go into that negotiation knowing that you have everything that you need. All right. The other thing I wanted to mention is we do offer, you can do kind of more practice, which is Big Interview, which is a resource that we pay for. It's on the Career Center's website. They do have negotiation basics. And so what would happen is they would say something to you, you can record yourself and listen to it back. And so that can help you kind of practicing things. It's very important to say it out loud. This is for interviewing and negotiation. You can say, I got it. I know what to say in my head. I don't need to practice out loud. Getting it from your brain to your mouth, a whole different ballgame. And so it's important to actually verbalize things. You're going to create a new circuit in your brain, will allow you to remember it much better than just saying, I have it in my head, but I don't know, I've never practiced it out loud. It's totally different. So this is a way to do that. If you don't feel comfortable yet working with another person, you can do this on your own if you have a webcam and a microphone. So Big Interview is a great way to practice. Career Center can also help. You can practice with us. We're all certified in salary negotiation, and so you can make a salary negotiation appointment. We do virtual appointments right now. We also have that page I mentioned, and it has all of the information and resources that I mentioned on our webpage. If you just go to Towson, you can see the link here. You can take a picture of that, screenshot it. That can be really helpful. And Big Interviews also on there as well. So if you want to go more in depth, you can actually do the Work Smart online salary negotiation course. If you really want to get in depth, they have a whole, I think it's like 5 modules. It's free and you can go through it on your own and really practice and get some good resources. Here's my email in case you have some specific questions, or if you're like, I don't remember that resource, or whatever it may be, feel free to reach out to me. It's just dbrower@towson.edu, and I'm happy to either set up an appointment with you or just answer a question via email. So yeah, that's a very fast version. I hope it was helpful. Happy to answer questions. But yeah, salary negotiation is important. I hope you all go out and negotiate. So thank you.
It looks like we had one question, Danielle, about Anthony heard that there is no negotiating when applying for a job as a rookie nurse. Would you say this discussion is valid for new nurses?
My kind of response is it doesn't hurt to try. They're not going to rescind the offer just because you try to negotiate. If they're not going to say, oh, you asked for more money, get out of here. They're not going to do that. And so if you do it in a professional way, it may be true. It may say, oh, well, we just don't have the budget for that. But you can still discuss benefits and other things. My suggestion is to still begin the conversation. The worst they'll say is no, and you can still accept that offer if you feel like it's in your target range and it feels like a good job. But it never hurts to ask because it'll really, you'll only know if you ask. And so I would say, yes, I would still begin that discussion. Certain industries are not able to provide, increases or anything like that. But if you do it in the right way, they're not going to take it poorly. They're not going to be like, oh, this isn't the right employee for us. So yes, I would say definitely begin that discussion and that conversation.
Perfect. Thanks, Danielle.
Yeah.
So that concludes tonight's webinar. So thank you so much for leading this presentation. I hope everyone got something out of it. I will be sending the recording out, like I mentioned in the beginning, to everyone. And we have one more webinar left in our Senior and Recent Grad Week series. It's on how to budget and becoming financially independent. Make sure you follow the Alumni Association on our social media channels, and I've posted them in the chat for you. And we hope to see you next time. Have a great night.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.